Vote Rejoin EU.
Vote Rejoin EU.
Recent state visit of President Macron to London was significant in a number of ways. The very fact that it took place at all was welcome. It marked a significant change from the performative Euroscepticism and Francophobia, which had characterized so much of the Conservative government until 2024. And that was particularly true of Liz Truss and Boris Johnson. Keir Starmer deserves some credit for getting back on a more even keel relationships between the United Kingdom and particularly France. So that's very welcome. It's also welcome that a number of topics of common interest were discussed between Macron and Starmer, apparently particularly relating to coordination on nuclear matters. Slightly more questionable is the arrangement that they came to about the returning of undocumented migrants to the United Kingdom to France. It's not an agreement or an arrangement that in itself is particularly damaging or unwelcome. It's a small agreement that probably won't make a great deal of difference in the short term. The problem I see about it, though, is that it seems to play into the reform idea that illegal migration, undocumented migration, is a major problem facing the United Kingdom. That's really the wrong way to look through this telescope. The real question that the United Kingdom has to consider is what legal migration it wants and needs to have for an aging population, for an economy that in many ways has been stagnating for the past 10 or 15 years. When we were in the European Union, we had a rational approach to migration, legal migration. We had freedom of movement. People could come, usually young people from the rest of the European Union, work here for a couple of years, and then go back home, taking their skills with them and reintegrating themselves into the social security systems of their own countries. That isn't an option open anymore. It's not a self-adjusting mechanism. We need to have a conscious and coherent policy on migration, which it seems that public debate and the public media won't allow the government to have. An example of the irrationality of the discussion of issues relating to migration has been provided recently by the Afghan tragedy, whereby a number of Afghans, many of whom had helped the United Kingdom during the past 20 years, have been put at risk by a data leak. Now, rightly, the British government wanted to help such people by bringing them to the United Kingdom, by making it easier for them to get asylum in the United Kingdom. That's been something denounced in the most scurrilous terms by Nigel Farage in particular, saying that many of these people will be criminals and that they will put British women on the streets of London and other cities at risk. It's an example of the danger of singing, of dancing to the reform tune. What the British government should be doing is explaining in a rational and coherent way its approach to the need for immigration into this country and the benefits that come from it. But that's not something that we've been expecting from or able to benefit from under this particular government. The third and perhaps most interesting aspect of Macron's visit was his remarks at a formal dinner in the presence of Keir Starmer that Brexit had been damaging both to the European Union and to the United Kingdom. Now, these remarks obviously were much criticised by much of the Eurosceptic press and media. There was some suggestion that Starmer may himself have been not unhappy to hear these remarks because they chimed in with his own views. In a way, that's almost more shocking than if he were politely disagreeing with Macron. If it is the case, as obviously it is the case, and an increasing number of people in this country believe it to be the case, that Brexit has been damaging, it ought to be one of the first tasks of the Prime Minister, of a political leader, to be articulating that truth and suggesting ways in which the problem can be rectified. It really shouldn't be necessary for us to wait for foreign statesmen, however well-disposed and however eminent, to come to our country and tell us publicly what most people think already. I'm afraid that this is all too typical of the downside of this Starmer administration, which is a sense of purposelessness, a lack of a coherent narrative behind their political activity. It's been a bad couple of weeks for Starmer. There was the rebellion on welfare payments. There are looming further rebellions coming. And his reaction to that has been to lash out and suspend a number of people, in addition to those who've already been suspended from the Labour whip. The hope is that this cracking of the whip or withdrawal of the whip will act as a deterrent to others and show the strength and determination of Starmer and those who surround him. This rarely works. It's usually simply a stimulus for further dissension and further difficulties within the party. The problems of the Labour Party, it seems to me, don't come from the lack of discipline within its ranks. They come from the lack of a coherent and overarching narrative of what the Labour government is about. It's much too easy for Labour MPs, some of whom will lose their seats at the next election, to relapse into the cynicism of thinking, well, the Labour Party and the Labour government are only there to keep themselves going. They don't have any political vision or political objectives which we can get behind and think we are usefully employing our career in the House of Commons. I would suggest two related components and pillars of a new narrative for Keir Starmer. The first is proportional representation. The Labour Party has made it clear that it is prepared to look at new aspects of the electoral system with its suggestion that 16-year-olds should be given the vote, something that, interestingly, the Conservative Party seem unhappy about because they think that there won't be many 16 to 18-year-olds voting for the Conservative Party. I think they're right about that. But the Labour Party could be more radical if it said that proportional representation is going to be a way of preventing the slide to right-wing populism after 2029. There are a lot of people in this country who are extremely unhappy and worried about that, and they will be much reassured if we introduce a proportional representation system, which will make that much less likely. There's no perfect electoral system, but something along the lines of the Scottish system, I think, could be attractive to many voters, and it would be something that the Labour Party could present as a good of the country that it was putting forward. A good of the country, which in the short term might harm the Labour Party. The Labour Party would get fewer seats under proportional representation than it got in the last general election. It would be a sign of long-sighted selflessness if Keir Starmer were now to advocate proportional representation. And the other supporting pillar of this new programme would obviously be rejoining the European Union, something which many people want to do, and which would have, as all economists agree, a major impact on the economic prospects of the country. We've had a number of reports that have come out recently pointing out that Brexit has cost us something like 4% of GDP. If GDP had been increased by that 4%, the fiscal position in particular of the country will be much better than it is now. And setting out a path for rejoining the European Union would be something which would convince the electorate that the Labour Party has a plan, a strategy, which goes beyond saying, we're not those idiots in the Conservative Party, we're much better than they are, and as a result, automatically, things are going to get better. The Labour Party deserves something that's a bit more fleshed out than that, and so does the country. Rejoining the European Union would be a plan, an economic plan that will make a great deal of sense. My own view is that you won't be able, and it wouldn't make sense simply to try and rejoin the customs union and the single market. I'm not sure it would be possible. I think it would take a lot of time. I think it makes much more sense to say that you want to rejoin the European Union and accept all the implications of that, rather than try and cross the river of rejoining the European Union by small steps. But that's something that different people will have different views on. As long as the goal is clear of rejoining the European Union, it would transform the political and economic prospects of this government. I'm not sure that Keir Starmer will be willing to take such advice. And I've come to believe that it may be that his position isn't as secure as I thought it was. Despite his enormous majority, he seems to be incapable of handling it in a way that will reinforce his position, but opens rather himself to various criticisms and weaknesses and dissension within his own ranks when he doesn't have to. If he can't get more of a grip on the narrative for his party, then it may be that he will be replaced, and whoever replaces him will have for free from the Rejoin EU party these two proposals, proportional representation and rejoining the European Union. If in 2029 the Labour Party's leader, whoever it is standing on a platform of exactly that, proportional representation and rejoining the European Union, then he or she will have no more enthusiastic supporters than the Rejoin EU party. I personally will be happy to give my vote for a Labour Party candidate if that's the manifesto and that's the platform on which he or she is standing.
Vote Rejoin EU. Join the EU vision.